I'm going to start with myself. And if I was sitting down there, I would complain to the chairman that we don't have the EPA here and we don't have the Food and Drug Administration here, because really that's who needs to be at this hearing. And I do want to thank all of you. I mean, this has been difficult for me because I just simply did not understand what in the hell was going on. You've got the EPA saying the Montreal Protocol says we got to take this stuff off the market. The FDA saying, yeah, we're working on a replacement. We're going to get to it. But it just wasn't happening. And I couldn't get anyone to answer my questions. Lisa Jackson, Gina McCarthy were not only dismissive, they were derisive. Dr. Hamburg at the EPA just simply evaded the question. But now I understand. There is a contingent of people who do not think that epinephrine belongs as part of the armamentarium for treating asthma. Okay. Dr. Kraft, have you talked to the FDA about the withdrawal of epinephrine as an asthma therapy? I mean, it's been around for 50 years. Right. Presumably it was approved at some point. So have you provided testimony or documentation to the FDA on this subject?
What I have done is we have been involved as a society in looking at...
So the answer to the question is no, you have not...
No, I have not talked to them directly other than offline. So you won't find any documented testimony. One thing I would like to put forth, however...
Well, can you provide us those things that you've sent to them offline? I mean, you have communications?
Oh, and I'm just being told the ATS, other than myself personally, has commented on the transition process.
Okay, so you will, on the transition process, but I mean, look, if you want a drug withdrawn from the market, and this happens all the time, I mean, you go to the FDA and say, we have post-market surveillance, this stuff is as bad as Key-Tech, this stuff is as bad as, I forgot what the anti-inflammatory was, Vioxx, and things happen.
Sure.
Have you done that?
We can provide you with testimony. Absolutely. We have been to the FDA. We have two issues, actually, with if you would permit me
what did the FDA tell you?
To speak. We have issues on there's a CFC issue. To be honest, I'm here today as a physician caring for patients. I'm really here for the patient safety piece, because we've been calling for the removal of inhaled epinephrine well before Montreal Protocol really became an issue.
Right. So that is the issue that you're coming to discuss today. But the hearing is on the Montreal Protocol and the CFC prohibition preventing asthmatic patients from having a rescue inhaler.
Absolutely.
And I'm speaking to you not as a member of Congress, not just as a member of Congress. I'm also a physician. I'm also an asthma patient.
Right.
And I use over-the-counter epinephrine multi-dose inhalers, and I have for some time. I use them as part of the rescue phenomenon that we've all heard talked about. And yeah, okay, I'm a doc. I can go down to the pharmacy, all-night pharmacy, and write my own prescription for albuterol. But if I get trapped in a situation without an inhaler, it happened to me in Chicago at an NRCC fundraiser a few years ago. The hotel put me in a room where somebody had been smoking. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, guess what? I can't breathe. So I got two options. I can stay up the rest of the night holding onto the chair using the accessory muscles of respiration and have a sleepless night, or I can go down to the front desk clerk and say, where's your nearest 24-hour pharmacy? He says 1 block over, 2 blocks up. I say, thank you very much, take my life in my hands, walk across the streets of Chicago at 2 o'clock in the morning. But a rescue inhaler is available to me.
Right.
And I could do this without being a physician, without just being a regular Joe. You can go and get that, but not anymore. And this is the difficulty that I have is you have the product in the warehouses. If you're really concerned about CFC, if this is really about the hole in the ozone, what's going to happen to those canisters? I mean, at some point they degrade to the point where they blow up, I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the life cycle is of one of those things. But the CFC is going to go into the environment. So what are we preventing here? Are we going to go put them in Yucca Mountain and entomb them in concrete so that they don't ever get, I mean, I don't even know how much CFC we're talking about here. But it's just preposterous that we're having this argument around CFC, around the propellant under the Montreal Protocol, when really your beef is with epinephrine, and we should have the FDA here, and you should be asking them to explain why, what studies have you done, why do you still allow this stuff to be sold? And I would have some questions for them about that as well, but no one would answer my questions. Can you understand the frustration? I've had Lisa Jackson here at this table, and she just looks at me like I'm nuts. I've had Gina McCarthy, and she laughs that I'm even concerned about this. Margaret Hamburg won't even answer the question. Can you understand why there's such frustration with this? And at the same time, I'm getting these same letters from constituents. Doc, how come I can't go buy this stuff anymore? How come you took it away from me? How come you know better than I do about what's best to treat my asthma? It's not just breathing through a straw, it's breathing through a straw that's packed full of cotton. I mean, this...
Absolutely.
You know, Mr. Ward, I mean, this is a dreadful set of symptoms to have visited upon someone. You've got a rescue inhaler. If the issue is that it's not a satisfactory pharmacologic agent, let's work on getting albuterol over the counter.
I agree.
And I will just share with you my personal preference is CFC is a much better propellant than HFA. HFA is for wimps. CFC delivers the right dose at the right time. I'm going to yield to the ranking member of the subcommittee.
Would I be permitted to answer?
Oh, please.
Thank you. So I agree with your frustration. I can understand that. If I were your doc, I would make sure you had 3 separate albuterol inhalers. I'd have you put one in your briefcase, I'd have you put one in the glove box of your car, and I'd have you put one in your wife's purse to make sure that you always have albuterol with you. So that's the first order.
But you know what? The best laid I do that, but the best laid plans don't always work out. And sorry that I wasn't prepared that night, but it happens. It happened on a flight into Dulles where I didn't have an inhaler. I have a long cab ride back. Oh, my lands, I am really in trouble. I asked the cab driver, would you stop at a pharmacy and let me pick up a rescue inhaler so I'm not sitting here in the back seat of your cab suffocating? Right. And he was happy to accommodate me. I mean, those situations, those are real world situations, and they happen all the time.
Agreed.
My wife will likely not carry one in her purse for me, but I do have one in my glove box. I do have one in my backpack. I've got one. I don't carry a briefcase, but yeah, I've got them scattered all over my life, but sometimes I wander away from them. Well, Mr. Chairman, I would just reiterate the observation that we're here today having this hearing. The legislation has been introduced essentially because 2 federal agencies declined to be truthful with the committee. And that's the real tragedy here. Yes, we should have the EPA here. They should be answering the question, why are there 2 prescription products that are continuing to use CFCs, still sold, not affected under the ban? We should hear from the FDA. Have you had post-market surveillance data on inhaled epinephrine products that lead you to believe that it's unsafe? But instead, we've got this mishmash, this backdoor banning of a product that's been approved for 50 years on which people depend under the Montreal Protocol. I mean, this really makes no sense. If we're really frightened of the CFC in those remaining canisters that Mr. Shandell has secreted away somewhere, I submit we ought to reopen Yucca Mountain and take them deep into the earth and entomb them in cement like we would radioactive waste. But those canisters are eventually going to degrade, pop open, and the CFC floats over the Antarctic and widens the hole in the ozone. At least that's what we're led to believe, that this small amount of CFC is going to lead to all sorts of global calamities. Dr. Kerwin, look, I've been in the emergency room, or I'm sorry, the ICU, when a young patient has died from an aspirin overdose. I mean, that's a tragic, the acidosis that accompanies, like 36 hours later, everybody thinks the kid's out of the woods and then he dies. So we know people can die from over-the-counter products. Yet people take aspirin all the time for headaches. Would it make sense that we told people if you have a headache, you really shouldn't take aspirin anymore, come to the emergency room, let us do a CAT scan to make sure you're not dying of a brain tumor, and then we'll get you something? I mean, that's kind of what we're saying here, isn't it?
I would say that the principle of having medicines available over the county is sort of a twofold principle. One is America was settled by frontiers people who came out to many of the big states, and they didn't have a doctor on their Oregon Trail wagon train. So we live in a country where people have a fundamental right to try to treat themselves first before they take the radical step of seeing a doctor. The second thing I'd say is medicines over the counter are designed in order to help the many, even if overuse of the medicine or misuse might harm a few. And I think Tylenol, 20 pills of that can hurt your liver. Benadryl, 20 pills of that could put you in a car crash. And yeah, 20 puffs of albuterol of epinephrine might make your heart race. But these medicines are consistent with the values that patients should have a right to treat themselves initially, and they should then seek better medical care.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just close with the observation that we should require the two federal agencies involved, Environmental Protection Agency and the Food and Drug Administration, to come before this committee and be honest with us for a change. None of this hide the ball, oh, it's a Montreal Protocol thing. If there is a danger to inhaled epinephrine, then why the hell has the FDA has not prevented it? And we've been through this round and round with the FDA where they say, oh, we know that something's dangerous, but we can't prevent it being sold. Well, that's nonsense. That's their job. That's what they're there to do. If they have post-market surveillance that says inhaled epinephrine multi-dose inhalers are damaging to people's health, they owe it to this committee to come here and share that.